Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's story is about Op, who discovered that his wife cheated on him while she was away at a conference. Op had suspicions, so he checked her computer and was shocked by what he found. He then picked her up from the airport and confronted her about everything he knew, and now her life is in shambles. Let's dive into today's tale. I first met my wife in an online book club roughly a decade ago. At the time, all I knew about her was the book she was reading. I discovered that she was undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatments for stage 4 metastatic cancer. As a result, I reached out to a few men in our group and requested that they send me small gifts so that I could organize a care package for her. When she received the package, she was overjoyed, grateful, and appreciative. We started to message each other privately, and eventually, our friendship grew into a long-distance relationship. I continued to send her letters and small gifts, which she opened after every chemo appointment until she finally achieved remission. We lived 1,000 miles away from each other, but we made the effort to visit each other by flying back and forth. Eventually, my partner moved to my state, and in 2015, we bought a house together. The same year, we got engaged, and we tied the knot in 2016. On the surface, our marriage was great. We only had one argument during our 6-year union. I had a well-paying job that allowed her to secure her dream job, which she still has to this day. With a stable income and no children, there were few stressors in our marriage that could lead to arguments. Whenever we had disagreements, we made sure to resolve them within hours, or so we thought at the time. I'll elaborate on this later. In 2020, we made the decision to sell our house and relocate 1,000 miles to be closer to her family. In May 2021, she had to undergo a hysterectomy due to chronic bleeding and required 2 units of blood before the surgery. Given her critically low hemoglobin levels, I was fully supportive of her. She took 12 weeks off work to recover, and I took 6 weeks off work to take care of her. Even though the surgeon cleared her to return to work after 6 weeks, I encouraged her to take the full 12 weeks off to recover, and I remained supportive throughout the process. After I went back to work, and just a week before her scheduled return to work, she flew out of state to visit a female friend and coworker. During her stay, she had sexual relations with another man, with whom she had been having an emotional affair for several months. I don't know whether I was the first person she had a sexual encounter with after her surgery, or if it was him, but he was aware that she was married. I discovered her infidelity completely by accident. Last weekend, she was out of town for a conference. A few things happened that, in retrospect, had no direct relation to the affair, but they gave me a bad feeling in my gut. So for the first time in our marriage, I went through her computer. That's when I saw the explicit texts and photos that confirmed my suspicions. I picked her up from the airport, drove her to our house, parked in the driveway, and turned to her. I said, "Look at me. I know everything. I know that you've been cheating on me. I've seen the photos and text messages. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go inside and grab your essentials. You can go stay with your parents or friends. The next time you will hear from me will be through my divorce lawyer," I told her as she walked through the house to gather her belongings. She didn't deny anything as she packed up. I followed her around the house, feeling like a stranger was walking through my home and rifling through our things. Throughout our 6 years of marriage and during this difficult moment, I never raised my voice or my hand to her. After she left, I turned on the alarm system and stacked chairs again at the front door. I was filled with fear at the thought of her returning while I was asleep. The sensation was akin to an intruder forcefully entering my home. In the last 24 hours, I had only managed to sleep for a meager 50 minutes. Following her departure, my plan was to contact a divorce attorney the following day. Unfortunately, due to work obligations, I was unable to take a day off. As the house's title was in both our names, I lacked the legal authority to evict her before departing for work. To ensure that she didn't engage in any erratic behavior while alone in the house, I sent her a text requesting that she come over. We agreed to discuss matters when I returned from work. We engaged in a 2-day conversation that was accompanied by bouts of tears from both of us. Despite the facade of a wonderful marriage, we had both failed to communicate effectively for 6 long years. Conflict avoidance was our modus operandi, which meant we bottled up our emotions. In just 2 days, we learned more about each other than we had in our entire marriage. During her absence at a conference, I made a journey of an hour and a half to assist her 90-year-old grandfather. I helped him out of bed, provided incontinence care, assisted him in using the restroom, prepared breakfast, and administered medication. Within a span of 2 weeks, she sent me a second message expressing her love for me and gratitude for my help with her grandfather. However, she also admitted that her plan was to break up with me after returning from the conference, using the excuse of falling out of love, rather than mentioning the infidelity to avoid hurting me. Although she claimed to have been sincere, I found it difficult to believe her and suspected that she would have continued to deceive me. It was evident that every issue in our relationship could have been resolved if we had put in a little more effort. Although we had some common interests, we struggled to connect with the ones that were most meaningful to each of us. Initially, on the first day, I attributed this entirely to her. However, on the second day, I started to blame myself for not being a more attentive husband. After spending the whole day working from home, she desired nothing more than to converse with me when I returned from work. In contrast, I craved peace and quiet after toiling for 12 long hours. She wished to discuss important social and personal matters that mattered to her, but I failed to lend a listening ear because I couldn't relate to her experiences. These are merely a couple of examples, and I don't pretend to have been a flawless husband. I have my flaws, but I genuinely attempted to bring her happiness in every way possible. I discovered her during the most difficult phase of her life: a previous abusive marriage, cancer, sexual assault, anxiety, depression, seizures, and the possibility of future alcohol abuse. Despite the affair, we will be ending our marriage during the most prosperous period of her life. She is now in remission from cancer, has been abstaining from alcohol for over a year and a half, has not had any seizures in 3+ years, and her anxiety and depression are better managed. She is fortunate to have a wonderful group of friends and family who reside nearby, while I find myself at my lowest point. I relocated my life for her after our move and have no local support network. I have not informed my parents as I fear that they will be heartbroken by the news. I'm apprehensive that hearing about the divorce may have severe consequences on their health as they care deeply for her. At present, we are living together as roommates in our home. We have reached an agreement to make the divorce and transition process as smooth as possible for both of us, even if it takes several months. She offered me the house, the newer car, both of our cats, and more. Yesterday, we participated in a virtual Al-Anon for family meeting that provided therapy for family members of alcoholics. One thing that resonated with me was that family members should not hold themselves accountable for the actions of alcoholics. I feel as though I'm blaming myself for my wife's infidelity when in reality, I'm the victim. I'm seeking support from others who have been through similar experiences. In the future, I'll need to learn how to trust my partner once again, as my trust was shattered by the person in whom I had complete faith. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and I wanted to let you know that I'll be attending my first session with Infidelity Survivors Anonymous this coming Saturday. To provide some context, I'd like to mention that my partner who cheated on me was my first serious relationship. Prior to that, I had a couple of brief flings, but they didn't progress to anything more serious due to my struggles with erectile dysfunction. Although we had an active and satisfying sex life while in a long-distance relationship, the problem resurfaced once we began living together. I want to be clear that this is not an excuse or a justification for her infidelity. During the early stages of our relationship, there was a period of several months where we didn't have sex. My partner urged me to see a doctor about it, but I kept putting it off due to my own immaturity and embarrassment. It was entirely my fault. It wasn't until I was 29 years old, I'm now 33, that I finally got tested and discovered that I had very low testosterone levels. Looking back, I suspect that I had been living with this condition for over a decade because I always felt less energetic than my peers. After receiving testosterone replacement therapy, I felt like a new man. After I received testosterone replacement therapy, my partner and I resumed having sex. However, it never quite matched up to the level of intimacy we experienced during our long-distance relationship, and it didn't live up to our fantasies from before we moved in together. Although I still struggled with occasional difficulties maintaining an erection, it happened much less frequently than before. Recently, my partner mentioned that while we were having sex less frequently, she still enjoyed it when we did. I compensated for any shortcomings in the bedroom by focusing on other aspects of our intimacy, such as providing oral pleasure to her and receiving it in return, which she loved. Lately, I've been feeling like my testosterone levels might be low again. Unlike before, I'm now more mature and have already gone to get tested. I'm scheduled for a follow-up appointment next week to discuss the results. I want to be clear that I'm not trying to minimize the impact of my partner's infidelity. However, I do think it's important to acknowledge my own shortcomings in order to paint a complete picture of the situation. By the way, I have to say that your reaction to your partner's infidelity is quite a story. It's truly unbelievable that she would have the audacity to fly out of town to meet with her affair partner, especially after you had spent weeks taking care of her while she recovered from surgery. It's a testament to how soulless she really is. It's disheartening to see that she doesn't feel any shame or guilt about what she did. It's commendable that you were able to give her an ultimatum as soon as she returned so that she knew right away that her behavior wouldn't be tolerated. I noticed at the end of your post that you mentioned feeling guilty about the situation. Please know that you are not to blame for your partner's infidelity. People who cheat are driven by their own selfish actions, and it has nothing to do with anything you did. Based on what you've described, it's clear that you took good care of both your partner and her grandfather. It's important to recognize that your partner didn't have a justifiable reason to cheat on you. It's understandable that you might be struggling with feelings of guilt or blame, but it's important to move past that mindset in order to heal from this situation. Let's take a look at what some of the comments had to say. A comment from Groundbreaking Bet 2181 stands out, suggesting that your partner may have used you for support while she was at a low point in her life. The commenter goes on to suggest that once she was feeling better, she may have cheated on you as a way to exit the relationship, knowing that you would likely divorce her. It's alarming to consider the possibility that your partner's infidelity was premeditated. In response to a comment suggesting that your partner may have used you for support and then cheated on you as a way to exit the relationship, you mentioned that the topic of feeling used had actually come up in a conversation about a month prior to you discovering the infidelity. This is likely when things began to unravel. You were driving home from the mechanic, and your partner expressed feeling like you were using her for sex, cooking, and laundry. It's important to acknowledge that hearing that from your partner must have been incredibly painful and heartbreaking. It's understandable that this conversation could have been a turning point in your relationship. I was taken aback when my wife expressed that she felt I was using her. She clarified that this feeling stemmed from our lack of deep and meaningful conversations. I suggested seeking the help of a marriage therapist to address this issue before the infidelity came to light. We had an appointment scheduled for December 23rd. However, in the end, it turned out that I was the one being used. A user named Cranak commented that our communication was lacking, but they assured me that this was not the reason for my wife's infidelity. You are equally responsible for the mistake that occurred in your relationship. However, unlike your wife, you did not cheat on her because you respected her and valued your relationship with her too much to hurt her in such a disrespectful manner. Unfortunately, your wife did not show the same level of care and love towards you. For her, cheating was more important than your feelings, indicating that she does not love you as much as you love her. Her infidelity cannot be attributed to attention issues or lack of proper communication. The reason for her infidelity was simply because she wanted to cheat on you. She prioritized this desire over your marriage and stuck to her decision, which is not your responsibility. Both you and your wife had options, and while you chose to value and cherish your relationship despite its imperfections, she chose to cheat. Ultimately, it all comes down to decision-making and nothing else. I strongly advise you to avoid consuming alcohol and drugs as they will not help you in this situation. It's important to get tested for STDs by a doctor to ensure your health and well-being. It's better to be safe than sorry. Ask your wife to leave the house and stay somewhere else so that you can have some time alone to process what she did and begin the process of moving on. It's best to ignore all her attempts to speak with you, except for discussions about dividing assets. You need to distance yourself both physically and emotionally from her as much as possible. Request her to communicate with you only by mail. The less contact you have with her, the better you can begin to leave her behind. Thanks for taking your time to listen to today's story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's story. If there's a story you would like me to share, then please do not hesitate to contact me via email.